VanLiere is here from Nashville, Tennessee. Donna, you are all about Christmas. The Christmas Hope book series is how many books now?
Five novels.
And 3 movies.
Yes.
And more to come.
Yes.
You just hit them over the fence every time.
Well, thank you. You know, I really think that it's just, God has had his fingerprints all over it from day one.
New York Times, USA Today bestsellers. Tell us, without giving too much away, the premise of The Christmas Shoes.
The Christmas Shoes is about a little boy who really wants to buy his mother something special because she is going to pass away, and he knows it's going to be very soon. And he wants to buy her something very special for when she gets to heaven. And he decides that he wants to buy her a pair of shoes.
Now, I just had to hear that song once to know I've heard that song a lot. Tell us the relationship between the 2000 hit and the novel that came after.
I was backstage at a New Song concert. My husband and I have been longtime friends with the members of New Song. And Eddie, who is the founder and the leader of the group, he was telling me backstage, and it was so hot that day, Moira. It was in Knoxville, Tennessee, and it was July, and it was sweltering hot. And he's talking about Christmas. And he said, I'm thinking about writing a Christmas song. He gave me a very short, like a 2-sentence premise. And he said, what do you think? Do you think that would make a good song? And I said, you know, Eddie, I think that would make a really good book. And because I don't know what he said, but it was just something that sparked something in my imagination. And so before the song was written, I was able, on our drive back home to Nashville, I was already formulating an outline and a plot, and I was seeing characters in my mind. And so I started toying with an outline and started writing. And it took him a lot shorter to write, you know, a 4-minute song than a book. So he finished the song, and I was already well into the novel at that time. And he played it for me over the phone, and I just cried.
Did that speed up the writing?
It did. Because I really, I had so much of it done at that point, which I'm glad. Because I told him years later, I said, had you played me that song, I don't think I would have had any inspiration for the book, because it's all laid out right there in the song. But because he gave me so little information, that was able to spark, to spark the writing for the book.
One of the things that I'm sure has made this so winsome and so relevant is the authentic portrayal of family life. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly of our culture right now.
Right.
In the relationships within.
Yes, absolutely. There is
marriage, especially.
Yeah, there's a strained marriage in the book, especially. It's able to be brought out, but there's a strained marriage between the man who ends up buying the shoes for the little boy. It's to the point of where the marriage is crumbling, and there's very little hope for the marriage. And you know, it's this one encounter, and God can set up those encounters in our life if we're open to them and able to see the grace that he's extending to us. And it's this man who is able to see the grace that's extended to him, that's able to kind of resurrect his dying marriage.
A wonderful, wonderful challenge. Tell us the titles now that we can, first the titles of the novels.
The Christmas Shoes, and that was the movie, and then The Christmas Blessing, and they made a movie out of that one. The Christmas Hope, they made a movie out of that one.
That's with Madeline Stowe.
That's with Madeline Stowe, yes. The Christmas Promise and The Christmas Secret, and we've been told they're going to make a movie out of The Christmas Secret as well. And this will outrage you, Moira. They don't want to make a movie out of The Christmas Promise because it features 2 older women.
Oh.
Does that make you angry or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want to make a movie about that. They said no one would watch a movie that features 2 older women, and it's about a young man as well, and it's how their journeys end up colliding. But no one would be interested.
Who do they think's paying for their commercials?
Exactly. Who's watching these movies? Right. But The Christmas Secret is the next one.
Your personal family story could be a book. Well, do you think it might be someday?
Well, it actually, I wrote a book called Finding Grace, and it's about the grace that as an adult that I finally discovered. Because I'd always heard the word grace. You know, it's bandied around in church services, and you hear it throughout your life. I never really knew what that was until I was an adult. So it's about how I found grace, and we named our first daughter grace. So that book is called Finding Grace.
How long have you been married, Donna?
21 years.
And your husband is?
Troy.
Troy.
Yes, and he's home with 2 sick children. 2 of my 3 are sick.
'Tis the season.
Yes.
Was infertility the issue for you?
Yes, it was. Yes, for many, many years.
A long, painful struggle.
Yes.
And then what door did God open for you and Troy?
Well, it was a long journey, and anyone who's been on that infertility journey knows the bumps that come along the way and the things that people will say to you along the way. But it got to the point where I was digging so much into the Word, and a lot of times I dug into the Word out of anger and disappointment. And I always say that God doesn't care how you get into the Word because He's going to meet you there. In whatever emotion you're feeling at that time, God's going to meet you in His Word.
Even opening up to just talk to Him.
That's right.
It can be in anger, but at least you're connecting.
Absolutely, because He's big enough to take the anger. And I would dig into the Word, and it got to the point, there was just a series of epiphanies, really. But at one time I read in Psalms that God settles the barren woman in her home as the happy mother of children. Yes. And you know, I turned the Bible inside out and upside down, shaking it, looking for the word biological, which I knew was just going to fall out of that passage. But the word biological is not there. It says God will settle, and I love that He chose the word settle because women, we're settlers, you know, and we love to feel settled. He settles the barren woman in her home as the happy mother of children. And I knew then that I was being raised to be an adoptive parent, just like Joseph and Mary.
March 2002 to China for Grace. July 2004 back to China for Kate. And July 2007, David from Guatemala.
Yes.
Let's look at the pictures.
Yes.
I'm going to see your family.
Yes, that was taken a few years ago, the first snowfall in Nashville, and I just happened to snap that. I'll never get a better picture.
That's an action shot.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at them.
That was when we took them to Florida. They're out playing mini golf. They're happy, happy kids. That was on the Outer Banks in North Carolina. And David is, he's always smiling. That was the first day we got our puppy, just back in April. And she's a little rescue puppy. All of our dogs and animals are adopted. We have to keep the adoption theme. And that was shortly after we brought David home in 2004, our first family picture.
Wow. What's your word of encouragement to broken hearts in that waiting room to become parents?
Yeah, that's tough. That is really, really tough. And you know, it's hard to wait, and it's hard to be still and to wait for God's plan and a lot of times we want to shove that square peg into a round circle. We say, no, it's my way, it's my way, it's my way. It's got to be my plan. And that's the way I was. I really had my heart set on having children my way, because you get to the point where you say, well, you can't adopt a child because I'll never be able to say, oh, she's got my nose or she's got your ears. You know, you just can't do that. And it got to the point where I knew that I was being raised up to be an adoptive parent, because I finally opened my hands. Augustine said that God gives where He finds empty hands. And you have to get to the point where you have to open your hands and say, would you please take this, Lord? Because it's not doing me any good. I've never been able to do anything with it. Would you take it from me? And would you fill my hands with your goodness and with your plan, your dream, your desire, your hope? Would you give me your peace? And that peace will come. And I never, ever thought of adoption as our plan B, because the Bible says that God's plans stand firm forever. His plans stand firm forever, not our plans. You know, our plans are shaky. they're built on sand, but His plans stand firm forever. That was never God's plan B. He never saw my infertility from His throne and said,
I can come up with something else.
Well, right.
No.
I didn't see that coming. I never thought she was going to be infertile. Now what am I going to do? That never took Him by surprise. So I never thought of adoption as God's plan B, but His plan A. It was our destiny of grace, which is why we named our first daughter Grace.
Grace. His word says He says, those who hope in me will not be disappointed.
Right.
You're not disappointed.
No, I am not disappointed, and my husband and I, we always say that, well, you know, we cry at commercials, but our hearts have just been made so tender through the process of infertility and of children. We just got back from India, where we spent a week in orphanages there, helping out there. Our hearts are just so tender toward the plight of the orphan, and there are so many children around the world who deserve a home and who are looking for a home.
So is your heart looking to a bigger family?
Oh, I think I'm too old. But I know I try to encourage other people, because it's just the beauty of adoption. I can't describe it.
Donna, time with you is a beautiful thing, and it's just going away too quickly. The Christmas journey begins with, I think, our tradition, and for many people, we read the Christmas story in Luke. And it's right here, starting this book from the Bible, and then your introduction follows. Would you read the introduction to this book? Beautiful book. Let me just flip so that you can see. It's just designed for quick reading for family, with beautiful pictures. You see that? Short and sweet, but oh, the treat inside. The intro, please.
The story of the manger scene is familiar to most of us. Sweet little lambs looking over Jesus, doe-eyed cows and camels standing nearby, gazing at the little Christ child. Mary and Joseph snuggled warmly together, admiring the baby comfortable in his soft bed of hay. Wise men and shepherds gathering to worship and giving gifts to the king in the warm, well-lit stable, and always that magnificent star above to show the way. At least that's the image greeting card companies and church pageants have painted over the years. Somewhere along the way, the cave has been sanitized, the birth made painless, and the people involved stripped of all fear or emotion. It seems we have colored in or forgotten much of what happened to make that journey possible.
Now, this book doesn't in any way remove the wonder of the story, but it does bring some authenticity, some raw reality in a very stirring way to the story we know so well.
Yes, yes. I actually wrote this nearly 20 years ago. I was asked to write something for a church banquet, and I didn't know what to write. And as I was making dinner one afternoon, the mail came, and I opened it up, and it was the first Christmas card of the season. And there was Joseph and Mary lounging in their Calvin Klein robes in that warm, beautiful stable with lamb chop, you know, lying nearby. And it struck me, I thought, somehow I don't think that's how it came down the pike at all. You know, I think that we have stripped this story and romanticized it, and we have totally sanitized everything and just taken the fear and the emotion completely out of the equation. And I just don't think that's how it happened. And so that's how this story came about.
And it's so beautiful. Mary caresses his face and counts each finger on his tiny hand, and hands that once placed the stars in the sky and sculpted magnificent landscapes grasp her finger. Mary secrets away each movement and sound and scent in her heart. He looks up, and eyes that saw her before she was born strain to see his mother.
I actually received a message via Facebook 2 weeks ago, and a woman said, "This book shocked me." Shocked her. I thought, well, my goodness, how did this book shock you? And she said, "I never thought that Mary would have pain during childbirth." And I thought, we have done a terrible injustice to Mary and to Joseph if we thought that she would not have pain during childbirth. Jesus himself suffered while on this earth. And here is this woman who had to travel anywhere from 5 to 8 days to get to Bethlehem on the back of a donkey, walking much of the journey itself because it would have been so tiresome. And we think that she had no pain and didn't suffer at all to bring the child of God. Don't you know that the warfare between heaven and earth, you know, was trying everything to stop
prevent
this journey.
this from happening. And poor Joseph scrambling in that stable to help.
Exactly.
I mean,
and when the angel said, "Oh, by the way, you're going to be pregnant with God's child," that's basically all the angel said. The angel never said, "You're going to travel on the back of a donkey to get there. You're going to give birth in a cave. Your mom won't be there. There won't even be a midwife, but your husband, who's never been around for the birth of a child, will be there. You know, it's completely left out, all of that information.
And as Ron mentioned at the beginning of the program, you're so clear. It's very gripping. The stigma, just the shame, just leaving town. That they faced.
Right, to be pregnant in that society.
Yeah.
Today, if a 15-year-old is pregnant, you know, no one thinks about it. But then, she would have been totally ostracized, along with her family, for having this pregnant child wandering around.
And yet, this is a story I believe you can read to anyone of
Yes.
any age. And I tell you what, Christmas morning, we're going to start with Luke. It's right here. And we're going to keep going.
Oh.
It's wonderful. Where is this available, The Christmas Journey?
It's available at all major bookstores nationwide. It's also available through the online, if you have Amazon here.
We do.
Yes, if you have Amazon, it's available on Amazon, but all the major booksellers.
Donna VanLiere, and I am so glad that that kid who mocked your first story in grade 2 about a bear did not put you off writing.
Right.